The Knowtifier is automated customer notifications triggered from ACT. It's an add-on developed by Keystroke in Canada. It's been around for quite a few years and it's known for its reliability, its simplicity, and the power that it gives to ACT administrators to automate notifications either sent externally or internally, but also a number of other things that I think a lot of clients could find very useful. You can create customizable templates and merge into those templates data from ACT records directly into the message body. It can be triggered by field changes or dates. So as I say, a date could be approaching in a date field. It could be perhaps a renewal date or an anniversary or something of that nature, or just a change to a field. So for example, if a record ID status is changed from prospect to customer, that could automatically trigger an email notification. Now we can trigger from fields not only on the contact entity, but also on the opportunity entity, as well as custom tables. So if you've created any custom tables as part of your configuration, fields within there could be used to trigger a notification. So the notification emails, by the way, can be external or internal. So you can use those to alert clients in certain circumstances, or you could use them to alert your own system users of circumstances within the database that require their attention. It could even alert them to upcoming activities. Of course, you'll be aware if you're an ACT user that you can schedule an activity in ACT and have the system notify you in advance of that activity with an alarm, but that's only visible if you're logged into the ACT application. The Knowtifier can send you an email, so you get the notification even if you're not logged into ACT. The system can not only notify you of upcoming activities, it can actually create activities. So it isn't just about outbound notifications, it can also generate activities for users within the database when criteria that you've determined have been met. Not only that, the system can update records, so you can update fields within the database when the criteria are met. And also you can have any number of notifications configured in the Knowtifier. You pay an annual subscription and there's no limit to the number of things that you can use it for. It runs as a background service, so once it's configured, it just does its own thing in the background, sits on the server where ACT is located, it doesn't require any attention, and it will even restart. If the server restarts, it'll come back up, run as a Windows service and continue performing in the way that you've configured it to do. So let's take a look at the system in action then. When I log into the Knowtifier, it asks me to locate the database, so I'm just browsing to the pad file of the database, and then I'm putting in a username and password for an ACT administrator to connect the Knowtifier to that database. You can actually connect the Knowtifier to multiple databases if you wish to do so, and then once you're logged into the database, you can then begin to build these configurations. And using the buttons on the right hand side, let's take a look at a couple of the options. So if I was to add a new one, you can see that there are a number of choices here. And the most common ones tend to be an email notice, so an email that could be sent internally to a member of your team or externally to a client. An activity workflow, if you're not sending any emails but you do want to generate ACT activities based on certain circumstances. There are a couple of reporting based options here, but these are more to be used if you're using some of the Keystroke reporting tools that you can add on to ACT. The activity email alert is for alerting your users to an upcoming activity that's due. You can also use it to send notification of database synchronizations, which is pretty useful for administrators to know that users who have remote databases are synchronizing regularly. But let's just take a look at an example of an email notice. So we click next. So first of all, once you've created the notification, it can be enabled or disabled. So if you want to work on it and perfect it before you enable it, there's no need to check that box immediately. Let's give it a name. And then of course, if you're sending an email, you would choose a template. Now, if I click on the three buttons here, it takes me to a library where I can choose from one of the templates that I've created previously and just add that into the notification. Or of course you can create your own templates using a template editor. So if I click on the template editor button, you'll see that it will proceed to load the template editor. Now the template editor is a fairly simple tool. It's a little bit like Word, and you can start with a blank canvas, or you could of course open and change any templates that you've already got configured. So of course you can make these as complicated or simple as you like. If you've created a nice HTML type template in Word or Outlook, you could even copy and paste that into the template here. So I'm just going to start here by copying and pasting my email signature from Outlook into the template. And then it's just a question of writing the template to appear the way you want it to appear, and then introducing those mail merge fields in the appropriate parts. So first of all, I want to, in my database, by the way, I just have contacts and opportunities. I don't have any custom tables, but if I did, they would appear here, and all the fields available within those tables could be used in the mail merge. But if I select contact and then come down to the field which is first name, put my cursor where I want that to appear, and then click insert, you can see how this works. So this is going to say, hi, first name. I want to say, how are things at, and then the name of that person's company, question mark. So I'll just elaborate that to include a little bit more information from the contact entity. But perhaps, let's say I'm using this email to alert a customer to the fact that we've sent them a quotation from an opportunity in Act, and that opportunity is due to close, or its expiry is forthcoming. So I could bring in from the opportunity table the estimated close date. Let's say we're using that as the date that our quote would expire when we expect to get the order. So I could drop in that field as well. So I'm bringing in fields here from both the contact and the opportunity entity into the same template. So I just wanted to let you know that the quote we sent you last week is due to expire soon on, and then drop in the date. Can we help you further with this? So hopefully that's fairly straightforward, and you can understand how we can bring in those mail merge fields from any part of the Act system. So once I've got the template looking the way I wanted it to, I can just save as, and I can just call it whatever I want to call it, test 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I can close the template editor, which will return me back to the notifier. And of course, then I can go and select that template and use that in my notification. So if we click next, we're then asked to identify the type of record that we want to query in order to generate the notification. Well, of course, I've decided that my example will send a notification to those contacts who have an opportunity that's forecast to close within the next few days. So I'm changing the record type to opportunity. And then we can further reduce the field of contacts that would receive that email by adding some filter criteria. So for example, we might want to send the email notification only to people who have an opportunity that's going to close within the next few days, that are in a particular market sector, or that are managed by a particular salesperson, or where the opportunity has a certain value or greater, or where that opportunity has is at a certain stage. So I can use this query analyzer in the lower part of the screen, and Act users will recognize this as being very similar to the advanced query engine, and I can put in those parameters. So for example, let's say I only want to send this notification to people whose ID status within the database is prospect. So I can say ID status is equal to prospect, and click OK. And of course I can add further parameters to make that query as complex as I want it to, but let's keep it fairly simple now. So click the next button. So having identified I only want to send this email notification to prospects who have opportunities, I then need to determine what the trigger is for the sending of the email. And the trigger we're going to use here is a date field, but of course it could be a field change. It could be if somebody changes the stage of the opportunity from one thing to another, or the probability from one value to another. But in this particular case, we're going to trigger it by the date field, and the date field we're triggering it by is the estimated close date. So if I click Add, you can see the dialog explains there, this notice will be triggered on the following days before or after the anchor date. So if the estimated close date is the anchor date, I'm going to set this to trigger 3 days before the anchor date. So that is to say that 3 days before the estimated close date of the opportunity is reached, it will trigger the sending of the email. So click Next. And then, of course, the email itself, I've already chosen the template, but what I haven't yet determined is what will appear in the subject line. So I can type that in here. I can then determine who receives the email and also who's copied in. So, for example, I might also want to be copied in myself as the administrator to every email that's sent out by the notifier. Or, more reasonably, if it's about an opportunity, I might want to automatically CC in the record manager, the owner of that opportunity, so the salesperson is aware that this email has been sent to the client. Well, that might be a BCC rather than a CC. I can determine what the reply to address is on the email that's sent, and I can also change the email address field that the notifier is looking at when it seeks the target email address. By default, it will just look at the primary contact's main email address, but of course you may have multiple email address fields within the database, and you can get the system to send emails to those instead or as well. So click Next. Of course, when you've sent an email, you may wish the system to record a history. So if I want to do that, I can say, yes, please, check this box to record a history. And then, of course, you can determine what type of history is recorded. In my demo database here, I have a lot of custom types of history. It might just be email sent, or you might want to create a specific history type called automated email sent, for example, so you can differentiate between normal Outlook emails that are sent every day by users manually from these automatically dispatched notifications. If you want to, you can add the message to the history as well. And then next, it might be that just sending an email alone is insufficient for your purposes. So what you want to do is send the email to the client to alert them their opportunity is about to close, but also schedule an activity for the owner of that opportunity, i.e. the salesperson, to alert them to follow up on the opportunity. They're going to receive a copy of the email, but it would be nice if we can generate a task within Act that they have to attend to and clear to confirm it's been done. And I can do that from here as well. So I can add an activity here, determine when that's added, what type of activity it is, and the dates and times around that. So related to the anchor date. It doesn't have to be generated for immediate action. It could be any time frame related to the anchor date. And of course, in terms of for whom that activity is scheduled, it could be just the record manager of that particular opportunity, or it could be a specific person in the office whose designated responsibility it is to follow up on these types of situations. And of course, I can put in a regarding to alert the person to what it is, so when they get the activity, they know what it's all about. And field updates as well. So maybe I want to show within a custom field on the opportunity the fact that the automated email has been sent, so it's clear for everybody to see that that email has gone out without having to look in the history tab for a copy of it. So I could add a field change action there against the opportunity, or in fact the contact with whom that opportunity is associated. So again, I could create a custom field to accommodate that data, and I could decide what I want to say in that field to make it clear to anybody looking at the record. So click Next, and then that's basically the completion of a notification. I think you'll agree that it's fairly simple. The user interface is clean and logic based and easy to follow. We'll just look at one or two more examples. I mentioned that there was an activity workflow. That follows similar clean logic. I give the thing a notice name. It doesn't need a template path because it's just an activity notification. And then I build the query in exactly the same way as I did before if I want to limit the contacts to whom this notification will apply. I put the triggers in exactly the same as I did before. And then, of course, it just goes straight to the activity generation. So it's the activity generating step of the previous one that we looked at, which was the email notification, just with all the email elements removed. So it's just activities, this one. Another example is activity email alert. And again, I just give it a name. I can use a template if I want to as an email to describe to the recipient what the activity is about. And then I can say which users should be included, which users should receive these email notifications about their activities. It may be that I want all users to receive email notifications, but I can limit it to just specific individual users if I want to. If I click next here, I can also limit it to specific types of activity. So you might say, well, I don't really need to send people alerts for some of these custom activity types, but where they've got a phone call scheduled, I do want people to receive an email notification in advance of that particular type of activity. And then the trigger is just a question of determining how far in advance of each activity the email trigger should be sent. And to whom the email should be sent. Is it just to the scheduled user, or does it send an email to contacts as well? So if I've decided that I want this to be triggered only for meeting activities, could it be used to send an email the day before, both to the user within my organisation, but also to the external person, the customer or the prospect with whom I'm meeting? And then, of course, as before, we can determine the email subject line and which email addresses are used and referenced, whether a history is recorded, and that's the end of the process. So, as you can see, fairly straightforward to configure. Importantly, in order to have the system send emails, we do need to configure in SMTP mailbox details, and that's down in the lower right-hand corner under Settings. And here under the General tab, you can see that we put in an email address and a username and a password to access the mailbox and the mailbox server and port. So you will need to include that information. You'll need to get that from your IT provider or whoever manages your email system. So you do need SMTP mailbox credentials. Now, one limiting factor about the Knowtifier is that it only runs on a daily basis, once per day. So what I'd do is start the service here, and it would, in this case, the way I've got it configured, run the notification service at 5:40 p.m. every day. So it will look for all records that meet that criteria that you've set and trigger them at that time. We'd start the service running down here in the lower part of the screen, and as mentioned earlier on, that would just sit in the background and automatically generate notifications and the changes that you've asked it to manage without any further intervention from yourselves or users. I hope that's clear. If we can help you with any further aspect of notification, or in fact anything else to do with the ACT CRM, please do get in touch with us at your leisure. We'll be very happy to help.